Thanks for listening to the Ag Up podcast. I'm Isaac Draxler. It's been a little while since I've done a podcast, and so definitely wanted to put this out there. The news came down yesterday that Utah State is moving on from Tim Duryea, and they start a national search for a new head coach now. So wanted to give some of my initial thoughts, some ideas, some things I've heard. I've had a chance to do a little bit of research, but really, especially since we're not, we haven't even started the NCAA tournament, and some of the coaches that they'll probably want to talk to are involved in the NCAA tournament, and obviously it's early on in the process, so some of the guys that they could talk to, I think, are available to speak with right away. But it'll be interesting to see kind of the direction they go, the way John Hartwell decides to go, I guess. I always kind of put head coaches and hires into a couple different categories because they could either go with a kind of a retread guy like Tom Crean, Thad Matta, Lorenzo Romar just got hired at Pepperdine. Obviously, guys that guys like Mark Fox that have had maybe P5 jobs or that have been fired in the past, maybe been out of coaching for a year, different things like that. There's that option, and I think some of the ramp up period with a new coach that I think Tim Duryea had. You'd kind of skip that because they've instantly got a little bit more credibility. Obviously, a guy like Mark Fox or Tom Crean have proven that they can win, both at the P5 level and at the and in a smaller conference, smaller school. And so that's something to think about. I think that's an attractive option because, like I say, I think it could be a pretty quick process if they decide to go that way. The other option is kind of an up and coming current head coach. Some of those guys aren't going to be easy to hire. A guy like TJ Otzelberger, I think, will probably get another job. He's probably high on the list of a place like Colorado State that'll probably pay a little bit more than the Aggies will pay their head coach, depending on what they decide to do. So a lot of options. And then the other option, I guess, is an assistant somewhere. A guy that's coaching somewhere, say, a name, I guess the most common name as far as assistants go that keeps coming up is the assistant at Gonzaga. And he's definitely had a lot of experience, recruiting international players. Tommy Lloyd at Gonzaga has brought in a lot of those international players that Gonzaga's had. So those are a few options, or those are kind of the direction that you could go. I think, technically there's probably assistants, current head coaches, and current guys that have coached in the past. There's probably guys out there in all three categories that could be great hires. Some of the current head coaches. Well, I will say this: I think Utah State's gonna focus on the ones that have more experience instead of hiring an assistant, I would assume. But you never know if John Hartwell is comfortable with a guy that's never been a head coach. Obviously, he could pull the trigger and hire somebody like that. So some of the lists that I've put together. I think everyone on this list, by the way, some people love, some people hate. Obviously, a guy like Dave Rice, even Mark Fox, some of those guys are going to be kind of polarizing figures, I think, because they've been head coaches and they've had success and they've had maybe bad years and different things. They've gotten fired. One guy that I've heard I was really high on initially, and as I've talked to especially a couple high school head coaches, I asked one of the high school coaches. I asked him about Mark Pope, I asked him about Coach Pope from UVU, and he did not have good things to say about Pope. So from what I've heard about Pope, he's definitely gone down in my rankings. If I was going to rank a top 10, he's definitely gone down. I don't think the Aggies are going to get the number one on everybody's list if you make that top 10 list. I hope they can. I hope they can either offer money or convince a guy to leave a place and come to Utah State. I would hope that would be possible, whether that's number one or whatever number kind of priority that ends up being. I hope that Utah State. I would hope that they could convince somebody to come to Utah State, which is a great opportunity. A guy like Tom Crean probably will have other opportunities. A guy like TJ Altenberger is going to have other opportunities. Even a guy like Scott Padgett, as much as people think his record at Samford isn't too impressive, a guy like that will probably have other opportunities as well. And he got an extension at Samford and is doing really, really well as far as Samford is concerned. I don't think Samford's the powerhouse that's going to win consistently. So hopefully they are, I guess technically he could be leaving at some point. Samford's not somewhere that he would probably stay forever. Obviously a guy that's not working right now, Earl Watson, has a lot of AAU contacts, a lot of recruiting contacts, even though he's only had experience as a NBA head coach. There's there are a lot of options, and I think it will be a job that could be really sought after. I think a guy like Dave Rice could be really, really interested in the Utah State job. Somebody who's looking to get back as a head coach, get a second chance. I would think would be a great fit, or would be really interested in this opening. So it'll be interesting to see. Those are just some of my initial thoughts. I thought I would explain maybe in podcast form kind of what I'm hearing as far as Pope kind of going down on my list a few rungs. And then another guy that keeps coming up, like I said, there's a lot of respect and a lot of admiration in the coaching circles for Dave Rice, even Heath Schroyer, a guy that's at BYU, but he's not a guy that's going to want the BYU head coaching position necessarily, which I think could be, it's not necessarily the number one factor, but I don't think you want to hire a BYU guy that really wants to jump ship and go to BYU as the head coach there. So I think that is kind of what I've been hearing, what I've been thinking. I really, as far as the blueprint that I think would be great, is a guy with head coaching experience. You could either go with kind of a former player like Watson or Padgett that's got both, which would be great. I think that would be ideal. But if you can convince like a Mark Fox or a Tom Crean to come to Utah State, that would probably even be better. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't know what offers and other opportunities are going to be out there, and that's, I guess, what we'll have to watch. Obviously, Lorenzo Romar jumped on the Pepperdine job, probably just because he wanted to live there and coach at Pepperdine, which is a great place to be. But I'll record some more podcasts in the near future. Send your questions and comments to U State Aggies or Aggie Up on Twitter, and then go to ustateaggies.com for all your updated information, whether that be rumors, thoughts, new names, ideas. You can post on the message board what you think, and and we'll go from there. Thanks for listening to the Aggie Up podcast.